Hello, I am OmnusI here once more in my lair, answering another question from the RPG A Day selection from the RPG Brigade. Today being day 14, the question is, describe a failure that became amazing. It's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? Having somebody's failure turn into something good. But generally, a game master who is in charge of his world rarely lets his story get ruined or rocked because of failure. Failure happens, but you can sculpt events to serve your needs. One such situation, I don't know if I'm going to say this was an amazing thing, but it worked out fairly well. I was going to run the module Castle Greyhawk for my players. It is a whimsical adventure. Some would say silly, but I had picked it up at, I believe, a game auction, and I was running a game for my lady players. This was my wife and her friends, and they had asked me to be their game master. And I was honestly flattered they asked, and I did it happily for years. So I wanted them to be in this dungeon, and it's a committed dungeon. It's big enough that it has livable levels, but below that is where the chaos takes place, and a lot of it is spoofs and callbacks and such. But there's some genuinely interesting dungeon design to it. One of the driving forces of the story was that there's a random monster generator that just teleports in monsters into various places of the dungeon, which is how it stays stocked and can repopulate after the players have killed everything. So I was trying to think of how to entice my players to go there, and I had them in the city of Greyhawk, which I dearly love. I have several maps and resources for running in that city in the world of Greyhawk, Orth. And basically, I was kind of dropping a few hints, but they really weren't grasping it. They were just having fun shopping and, enjoying the idea of being in an uber magical city in the hub of civilization. I can't say I blame them. Greyhawk is an intoxicating city if you've ever had a character that was allowed to be there. Modern day, I guess, would be Waterdeep. Also a richly detailed city that if you just get to play in it, you can do a million different things. Well, at any rate, they were in the market, and I believe I had them pickpocketed. I had somebody pickpocketed. And one of the characters, playing a ranger, I believe, ranger or fighter, and she sighted in on the pickpocket, pulled out her bow, decided to shoot the pickpocket in a busy market at first level. Rolled a 1. In my table, if you roll a 1, it's going to fail. You're not going to succeed at what you wanted to do. And rolling is taking the die numbers going from 1 to 20. In Dungeons and Dragons, if you roll higher, you can hit more difficult creatures. Rolling a 1 automatically fails and will miss everything. But in my case, if you are going to make it more difficult, like say you're shooting at two people who are grappling each other, if one of them is your friend and you roll a 1, you have an excellent chance of hitting your friend if you're willing to shoot an arrow at him while he's wrestling with someone. Even worse is firing into a crowded street. You don't know what you're going to hit. She fired, she rolled a 1. I let the player roll the 20-sided die again to see the severity of, what you did. If you roll somewhere in the median range, say you roll something from 6 to a 15, it was a bad shot. Maybe your bowstring breaks. Maybe you grip the arrow and the bow in the wrong hand, and you slice the string with the arrowhead if you're using a broadhead, and just maybe you drop your whole quiver. something minor. If you roll a 20 or 20 down to about 16, usually I have your failure do something good. You miss the target, perhaps, but maybe you cut open his purse and coins spill out, or, something like that. Usually it's a little bit more humiliating than that, but, to let everybody know that you did fail, but something came out of it. If you roll a low number, below 5, well, something really bad happened. Maybe you accidentally drop your weapon, it goes flying, or maybe you hit yourself. In this case, you rolled a second 1. Rolled 1, 1, rolled another 1. I'm like, okay, well, you fire into a busy city street, roll damage. Oh, because now you know. You hit somebody, so she rolled and rolled max damage. I couldn't let that pass. So she took out a guard. One of the city guards. It's really bad idea to kill a cop. It's a terrible idea in real life, honestly. I have all the respect in the world for police officers. A city guard in a fantasy setting is just about as bad. So, and because she was traveling in the company of the others, they were all scooped up together by hordes of outraged guards. And what happened? They were sentenced to hard duty delving into Castle Greyhawk. They provided the hook. They stopped their shopping trip dead, and they were then banished to the castle until they actually solved the dungeon. So even though it was a failure and it led to something horrible, I think they ended up having to pay that guardsman's family. But, it was the perfect hook to get them into the dungeon and make sure they stayed in the dungeon rather than getting distracted by all the other things to do in that world. Which worked out fine for me. It allowed me to tell an entertaining story, and they had a lot of fun. So, I don't know if that was as amazing as, most failures rarely go to amazing. We've had very few things that I could say were truly amazing out of failures, but that one struck me as pretty memorable. So hopefully you're entertained by that. But, of course, hey, I'm opening up the conversation. If any of you have ever played a game or read a book or anything like that, and you think that it was a failure worthy of regaling everyone, by all means, comments are below. Please respond. I'm sure we'd all like to hear it. But I am OmnusI here in my lair. Thank you once more for listening, and I hope that you have many safe and profitable adventures in your time to come. I'll see you next time here in the Lair of OmnusI. Farewell.